embracing my identity, having my identity shift and change throughout the years and coming to terms with what my identity is. I mean, I think we all go through this experience, whether you become disabled or not, as we move through life, as we move through both our personal journey as well as our professional and leadership journeys. We have these different points that we're like, I am no longer who I was before.
Mhm.
Now I'm in a place that I'm recognizing I can no longer do things the way I used to do them. I have to do them differently.
Yeah.
And so that's really the audience that I speak to and that I work with. And it's people similar to me that are wanting to be on the journey of self-exploration and knowing themselves and self-identity and are on a leadership journey.
Welcome to the Leadership That Shines podcast, the weekly leadership training show that's built around three values that show up in everything we do: impact, influence, and growth. Whether you're leading a team, building a business, or learning to lead yourself first, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Natalie Davis. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Leadership That Shines podcast. I am your host, Natalie Davis, and so excited to be back with you all. And I am truly excited and honored to have a very special guest. This journey that we call life is really interesting because we have opportunities and moments where our journeys and our paths cross with people, and then they circle back around full circle and they come back again. And today's guest, I had the opportunity to meet more than 10 years ago. I
Mhm.
know that it's longer than 10 years ago. And recently we reconnected on LinkedIn just because I was taking in some fabulous content that she was sharing in terms of leadership expertise and insight on LinkedIn. And it was time for us to reconnect. And so here we are. I am so excited and honored to have Chrysta Bairre. Chrysta, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Natalie. So great to reconnect with you after all these years. And I'm so excited to really get to catch up and have a conversation with you now that we did know each other so long ago. Like I was a brand new business owner at the time. And
Yes.
now I've been in my business for 11 years. And so it's like, oh, so fun to see the progression and how the
Exactly.
leadership has grown and changed over the years.
Absolutely. I love that the title that you give yourself, that you were a new business owner at the time. I was like a hiding business owner. Like I was like you didn't know that I was a business owner because I didn't want to share it with anyone. I didn't want to share it with the world, which doesn't really help when you own a business. So that's
Mhm, mhm.
I have really enjoyed just watching your journey and your growth and the impact that you're having in your community. And so, one of the things that I want to start us off with is first giving you a moment to introduce yourself to the listeners. If you could tell us a little bit about who you are and your experience as it pertains to leadership and the journey and what it has looked like for you.
Yes. So, yeah, I am a speaker and author, and I'm also the founder of She Goes High. We're an empowerment community for women and non-binary leaders in Northern Colorado. And that's sort of the professional side. But like I like to say at She Goes High, at She Goes High, we support the human behind the business, not the human as a business. And I think whenever we're having conversations about leadership, it's so important to consider and create space for the human because
Mhm.
I have been a leader in various capacities throughout my life. I have followed leaders throughout my life. And something that I have seen really consistently is whatever's going on with the human
Mhm.
flows into how that person is showing up as a leader. And that's why I think like that human side is so very important. So, yeah, I'm here. I'm a speaker author. There's a ton of speakers and authors out there. Like, who am I as a person? I am a queer woman. I am disabled. I'm legally disabled. And when I say that, I mean I've been determined to be disabled by the Social Security Administration. And I grew up in poverty in the Denver area
Mm.
and really had a lot of challenges. My home life was very unstable. I had the disabilities that I have now, the medical conditions that I live with now. I've lived with my whole life. They are what is often referred to as hidden or invisible disabilities because
Mhm.
they can't always be seen on the outside.
Right.
Although the truth is that they were seen on the outside. Growing up, people did see things that were different about me. They did see that I struggled in certain areas. It was just not recognized to be as the result of any kind of medical conditions. It was thought to be, I was often told as a child that I was being obstinate, that I was being belligerent, that I was just acting like a princess, all of
Mhm.
these different kinds of things, instead of recognizing that my challenges were coming from a very different place and it was not behavioral and that it was truly medical. And, a big piece of that when I was growing up, so I'm a late diagnosed autistic. And
Yeah.
so it was literally a different neurotype. The way I processed information was different
Right.
than people who are not autistic. And so sometimes I struggled with concepts or activities that other people could do easily. And it wasn't that I wasn't trying, because I try. I try so hard at everything I do. I put all of myself into just about everything I do. Like that is
Yeah.
something that's really consistent. And so, that's been a huge piece of who I am and how I have developed as a leader, because being that kid with undiagnosed autism, as well as some other co occurring medical conditions, and struggling, being different, and having it be very known amongst my peers, as well as teachers and other adults, that I was different,
Right.
and feeling that distance has driven so much of who I have become today and how I show up as a leader, because I know what it's like to not fit in, and I know what it's like to try to hide parts of myself, like you talked about hiding in your business when we first met,
Mhm.
trying to hide parts of myself in order to be accepted or to get the job or the promotion or to be seen as a leader. I thought that I needed to be someone other than who I was,
Yeah.
truly. And it's just been a lifelong journey of really, first of all, creating space for me to be who I am, to work in the world as I do, to help try to create that space for other people as well, to embrace all of these different parts of myself and leverage them as strengths in my
Mhm.
leadership, instead of trying to hide those parts of me or, get rid of them, and to just really be more of myself. And it's interesting too, I just want to mention, because I was on another podcast recently and it came up that I'm a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, so I'm queer. And the podcast host said, "Oh, that's not on your website anywhere that you're queer." And I was like, you're right, it isn't. And
Mhm.
that's something I want to now intentionally go and update, because I feel like in so many professional settings, the feedback that I got was not that that was even wrong or bad, but just that, like, there's no place for that here,
Yeah.
right? There's no place for that here. Like, that's irrelevant in a business space.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something I necessarily led with. I do now when I'm out speaking. It's in my bio that I give out. I just haven't gone onto my website, which, anyone who has a website or even just a LinkedIn profile, FYI, this is your reminder to go take a look at it and say, is this still relevant information? Do I need to update this? Because sometimes once
Exactly.
you spend so much time and energy creating that bio in the first time you sit down to do it, and then you leave it and forget it, right? How many of us have just written something up and then it's like, yeah, 10 years later, somebody's like, so your bio says, and you're like, oh, wow. Like, like, I need to update that.
I've been too busy living life and doing the things to remember to go back and update.
Right, right, right. Um, but I do want to mention that, that part of my identity here as well, because again, if we're talking about being human, the humanness behind the leader
Yeah.
and being human as leaders, it's like, yeah, my queerness does not inform every aspect of my leadership, but it is part of who I am as a human, and the whole, the integrated human.
Yeah.
I'm bringing all of that into my leadership. So it's all relevant. It all matters.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
it's all part of that. And when I show up fully as a human in my leadership, it also just creates space for other people to show up as
Yeah.
themselves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and Krista, I think the big piece is like when you talk about that, like being able to show up in every space just as you are without trying to fit into, we call it the box, right? Like
Mhm.
and I think we grew up in the same era where there were certain expectations
Mhm.
of what a person in leadership will look like, how they'll behave, the words that they say. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, down to like the makeup of their home,
Mhm.
their choice in vacation spot and vehicle. I mean, there was really a box that you needed to check for everything to fit into what was required to quote unquote be a leader.
Right.
And so being able to create that space, not just for yourself and being comfortable in creating that space for yourself, I think it does so much more for the future generations of leaders that are looking to you as a mentor, that are aspiring to be like you, and seeing that that space actually exists now, because that was
Mhm.
not necessarily the case
Percent.
20 years ago, or I would even question if 10 years ago for that matter.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just so many different aspects. Like that was one thing that really, I really remember growing up in poverty was that I couldn't afford all of the cool sort of accessories like this. I'm totally gonna date myself here, but like the Swatch watches
Same, never
and
had one.
and yeah, the Swatch watches and the Trapper Keepers
Yes.
and certain clothes, that we couldn't afford. And
Yeah.
it really, like from just a visual perspective, it set me apart. I People knew that I was poor just from looking at me because I didn't have it wasn't even about being cool. I
Yeah.
mean, like, there was a level that I think image can be about being cool, but for me, it wasn't even about being cool. It was like, "Oh, we can tell you're poor from far
Right.
away because you don't have these sort of basic things that most, at least um I was gonna say middle age, but that's not the
Middle
right
class.
term, but, you
Middle
know
class.
middle class, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you very much, yeah. The middle class or above, had,
Yeah.
like, these basic
Yeah.
things, and so it's like, "Oh, well, we can tell by looking at you that you are poor and that you don't necessarily fit in here," and that was a
Right.
very painful experience for me as a child, and then that did, translate into the workplace. Like you said, there was very much growing up in a time where it was like, leaders look like this, they speak
Yes.
like this, they act like this,
Yeah.
and I could try to do those things. I could try to speak and act and look the right way. But that was often I wasn't very good at it necessarily. Sometimes I was, but it was also very painful because it involved like rejecting parts of myself instead of
Mhm.
embracing parts of myself.
100%. The visual that I get, is often like, getting to a door and realizing that you have to leave parts of you at the door before you enter into that space that you're going into, and that I think that that can apply to many individuals. I know for me, again, because of the generation that we grew up in, there were absolutely parts of me that I left at the door, that you would never have insight or availability and access to because it was not quote unquote appropriate, or
Mhm.
it didn't, fulfill what you would expect from a leader. So you leave it at the door and you show up in the shell of what everyone says, what the rest of the world says that you should be. And I think that it has made the pendulum swing to the other side where we are seeing more conversation, more acceptance, more discussion around authenticity. And
Mhm.
Krista, what I love is that you talk about like your uniqueness and embracing and the uniqueness and being empowered by that uniqueness. It's not something that happens overnight, right? It's not just flip a switch and it's like, well, pick up all your bags and come on in. Now you're the leader and there's a space that's available for you. Talk to us a little bit about stepping into the place of ownership for you being uniquely you, to be authentic and not as a buzzword authentic, like truly authentic.
Yes, and I love this conversation so much because when I started my business around the time that you and I met, I was hearing a lot. It was becoming such a buzzword at the time, like,
Yeah.
just be authentic. And I was having other business owners tell me, just be authentic, just be yourself. And I remember having this experience this internal experience of thinking like, wow, that is so cool. I would love to be myself. But first of all, I have no idea how to do that. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah.
I have not actually ever seen that really modeled for me.
Right.
And three, at no point in my life ever has someone wanted me to be wholly me.
Yeah.
They've always wanted me to be a filtered version of me, a smaller version of me, a more acceptable version of me. And what was acceptable completely depended upon the situation that I was in and who I was around. So it
Right.
was like this constant, the term is code switching. It's
Yes.
constant code switching to be like, oh, I'm in this space. So I'm going to adopt this persona, which was
Mm,
based on me, but was not the full me. And so, all these people saying, be authentic, be authentic. You've got a business now. Like you can create a business that is uniquely you. If you work for someone else, you are a little bit more required to
mhm,
do things a certain way or look a certain way, even though we're seeing that change, but that dynamic is still there a bit. But
yeah.
as a business owner, like be you. And I was like, what does that even look like? How do I do that? How does one do that? It
Right.
required taking up space in such a different way. And even just the practicing of taking up space was like messy in the beginning.
Mhm.
It was so messy. It was just like, I've never done this before. I've
Yeah.
never been given permission or given myself permission to actually be who I am. And
Right.
what does that look like? And the fear that I'm going to say the wrong thing or look the wrong way or have something that people are going to be, honestly, my fear was repulsed by, because that
Mm,
was very much my experience growing up autistic, particularly being undiagnosed, was that I regularly said or did something that other people thought was very strange and I didn't understand why.
mhm.
Like I was very much like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know what I just did. I obviously just made some kind of social mistake, but
Yeah.
I don't
Little
know.
faux pas there, but unbeknownst to me, I have no idea.
I have
Yes.
no idea what it is. I don't
Yeah.
know, what that looks like. And so I became very afraid of making mistakes in front of people,
Yeah.
because as a child, my experience had been that then I was ostracized, I was bullied, right? All of these things happened. And so there was a lot of fear, not just around, oh, I won't be successful, but around I will be rejected. Like as a
Mhm.
person, as a human being, I'll be rejected, if I do this incorrectly.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and and what does that look like? And masking is, similar concept to code switching that all autistic people do to some extent, and all humans do to some extent, but it's usually much higher with autistic people because we mask or hide autistic traits in order to appear less autistic so that we have more opportunities to be successful, in social situations and in workplaces and in business. And also, there's a level of masking if you are autistic and you have other marginalized identities as well. There's a level where you mask for your own safety too,
Mhm.
because, one of the hallmarks of, behavior that you need to have in order to receive an autism diagnosis is that you struggle with social skills and communication.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people who know me in more recent years who would say, you don't seem like you struggle with those things at all. And I'm like, that is from a lifetime of study and learning and
Wow.
masking behaviors. And in order to try to fit in, but that masking was so important for my safety because if you struggle with communication skills or social skills, a lot of times, particularly if you have more than one marginalized identity, then you actually become unsafe. So masking starts to be required not just to succeed, but even just to survive.
Yeah.
It's just like I have to mask in order to survive. And I think, you know, I'm sure there are people listening to this podcast right now that are diagnosed autistic. There's probably people who are undiagnosed autistic, and there's probably people who
Mhm.
aren't autistic at all, but still can relate
Mhm.
to the experience of feeling like I've had to hide parts of myself
Mm. Yeah.
in order to maybe just survive.
Right.
and or in order to try to fit in or to succeed or to, get opportunities. And
Mhm.
I've seen that because when I started my business, I was doing coaching. And now I'm focused on speaking and writing, and I'm not doing coaching anymore. But, I was coaching for the first 8 years of my business, and I worked with so many professionals that basically they were in jobs that they were very unhappy and underpaid in the jobs, or they started businesses. They were like, traditional employment is not for me. I'm going to start my own business. But they were carrying the behaviors that they had in the corporate world into their business, and they were repeating those behaviors. And they're just like, okay, why is this still not working for me? And
Mhm.
so much a part of that was what wasn't working for them was that not being true to themselves,
Right.
not accommodating themselves, behaving in ways that they think they're supposed to
Yes.
instead of ways that are actually organic and supportive to them and their growth and development,
Yeah.
right? And and then also, another side conversation, but like, also having a lack of boundaries at work is a huge one too.
Mm.
Because again, I think you and I grew up in a generation where it was very much like do what you're told.
Yep.
Do what you're told, follow the rules, you know, do these things in this order and you will be successful. And it was not, that operating in that way, there are no boundaries in that. That is like, I do whatever you say, and I basically have no agency, no autonomy in that. I just have to do these things. And so, we grew up with this huge lack of boundaries at work
Mhm.
and around work.
Mhm.
And then that
And in
just,
our personal lives. I mean, it
and
was
personal too, yes.
yes,
But I
yes.
hear
Yeah.
boundaries getting talked about in personal situations, and I don't hear it getting
Yeah.
talked about in professional settings as
No.
much, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
so the lack of boundaries and the lack of, authenticity is leading to things like imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
When we feel like we can't really, I think that's an aspect of what contributes to imposter syndrome is that feeling of like, I won't be accepted for as I am, or I'm not really good enough. I've only gotten this opportunity because I pretended to be something that I was not in order to
Mhm.
get it. Um, that's just like one nuance there. And then I think also burnout, burnout happens when we have no boundaries and when we aren't really being who we are, when we're performing, when we're being performative
Yes.
professionally and being performative leaders because that's what we think we're supposed to do. But then the cost of that is it's costing us ourselves, it's costing us our own health and well-being, it's costing us our relationships
Yes.
and all of those things. So, that's I mean, I could just go on and on, obviously, but I'm gonna pause there.
No, I think this is great, Krista. Thank you. Because one of the big things that really bubbles up for me is when you talk about individuals that are a part of any type of marginalized community, because you can, it's fill in the blank. For you, you make that reference to autism, and I think you can fill in the blank with any marginalized group that can relate to the masking or the code switching. And what comes up for me is the amount of cognitive resources that we are exhausting on the masking and the code switching. And I'm saying we because I've been in that space. And how much of the yumminess in life we're missing out because we're spending so much of our cognitive resources on masking and quote unquote fitting in or doing what's expected of us instead of just settling into who we are and being able to just show up and then grow and advance from that space
Mhm,
instead of I've got to hide this part of me and then also focus on fitting in and then focus on growing and advancing. How much further could we be if we didn't have to do the masking and the code switching,
mhm.
or the shrinking, and right that we often do in order to fit into what we've historically called as like this the expectations of society.
Absolutely. Uh,
Yeah.
and something that I saw a lot in my coaching because I was often coaching people who were, mid-career or higher or newer business owners,
Hmm.
was like they had done all of these things, followed this path that they were told, like, this is the path to success. If you do these things, you will be successful. And, they're ending up mid-career, midlife and above, and they're just like, I am not satisfied that I did the things I was supposed to do,
Yep.
and I am not at all where I want to be in life and in my, you know, professional life as well. And they're like, so what now?
Yeah. Absolutely. That you're speaking directly to me, so thank you. I don't feel judged in that though. That's like you are speaking directly to me. That's it. Like I've and it's not I woke up one day. I think you get to that point where you have the realization. Well, for me, I had the realization of I don't even know who I am, much less am I in a space where I can identify what I want or who I want to be or what I'm aspiring to be because I don't know who I am. And so when I made that conscious choice to stop with the masking, to stop with the code switching, 90% of the time. So I've scaled it back. It's not completely gone. And that's a whole sidebar. I don't know if I'll ever be in a space where I can show up 100% authentically who I am because that may scare some of the world, right? And not that it's bad. It's
Uh-huh.
just that there are things in this life that I don't like. I don't vocalize it, but there are things that just do not resonate with me.
Uh-huh.
And it would be offensive to people if I started to share that with everyone, right? And or vice versa, things that I do like where people are like, that's strange. That is really strange, but to each their own. But I think about that for myself. And I thought, for years and years, I actually put a lot of the blame on my parents. And I think you're exactly right when you talk about we grew up in this generation, in this era where we were told to just do what we say. And then there's no room for creative thought or exploration. And if you go into that space, it's often deemed as being rebellious or going against for whatever reason. And so I grew up in a household very much like that. I was told exactly what I was going to do and I did it. And I got the gold star and I got the good girl, right? Sugar and spice and all things nice. And life was easy and fine because I did what I was told to do. And I didn't have the boundaries. I didn't have an understanding of my own personal identity. I didn't understand where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And you're right, entrepreneurship was kind of this manna from heaven, like, oh, I can actually just make it. I can create it. I can create this space where I'm able to show up authentically as I am and still provide value and service to other people. And that feels good. But I don't know if this is it. I'm sure there's more.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm sure there's more. Chrysta, you are doing work right now with specifically with women and non-binary in leadership,
Mhm.
non-binary individuals in leadership. Talk to us about identifying that target, or I don't want to say target audience, ideal client. We'll say ideal
Yeah.
client. Like, what was your process in discovering that there was a need there, and what are you bringing to fill the void that's in that space now?
Well, I think it comes back to this conversation around authenticity because I was a newer business owner when I started She Goes High, and I was putting myself out there day after day, which is so incredibly vulnerable and just, you know, wow. And also, I was trying to grow this business, and people were like, "Be authentic," and I was practicing taking up my space in a different way, practicing accepting myself and really allowing myself to be fully present.
Hmm.
And that journey was so scary. And so when I started She Goes High, it wasn't like, oh, these are my target clients or this is my target audience. It was nothing like that. It was just like, I want this space for me. I want a place where I can go to
Yeah.
practice some of these skills. I want to place a safe space, a psychologically safe space where I can go and say, I'm going to try some new stuff. And it might be awkward and it might be messy and I might embarrass myself and make mistakes. I want to be making new mistakes. I don't want to be making the same old mistakes that I've made before. I already know what happens there. That's boring. I want to
Yeah.
make new mistakes. That's terrifying.
Yes.
It feels like I have a lot to lose. And so I wanted a space where I got to practice that, and I wanted a container. So that's really what I was creating when I started She Goes High, was I was creating something that I felt like I wanted for myself, and I thought maybe other people want this too. Maybe there are
Mhm.
other individuals who want this. And as it turns out, there are, and there was, and like She Goes High, we this is our ninth year. We'll be going into this year. And that really started to, once I started She Goes High, it really started to shape and change some of the things that I was speaking about
Mhm.
and some of the things that I was writing about, because I was really on this journey for myself, and I was just inviting others along, other people who were similar to me in various ways. I was just like, "Hey, we've got some similar experiences, we've got some similar challenges. Like, let's do this together. Let's do this together."
Mhm.
And so that was really how so much of this started for me. And as the years have gone by and different things have happened to me in my life, including perimenopause and then reaching menopause, was like that did lead to me getting diagnosed, my late diagnosed as autistic, as well as diagnosed with some other health conditions that I have that became worse during perimenopause and then became worse and more disabling after COVID. Particularly, I have a condition called POTS, is the short version. It's short for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and there is evidence that I have had POTS since I was at least a teenager, but it was in remission for a period of time. But the number of people diagnosed with POTS has more than tripled since COVID, because it can be caused by a viral infection. And so a lot of people have developed POTS post COVID. And so, think, my conditions started to become more and more disabling, and it became more and more essential for me to actually be authentic and to stop trying to perform and to really be who I am, because there was no way I was going to manage otherwise. When I can show up on this podcast, I can show up at a speaking engagement, I can do all of these things in these little limited time frames, but the reality is that I am truly disabled, and every aspect of my life is impacted. I am only able to work between 10 and 15 hours a week. I have a caregiver who comes in and helps me at home 4 times a week. And I share all this just to really illuminate that, like, well, first of all, things change in life, right?
Yes.
Um, but to illuminate, this part of my journey where it was like the people that I speak to, that I include in She Goes High, as well as when I'm speaking, like some of my favorite speaking engagements are to employee resource groups or at entrepreneur conferences, because they're these people who are, they're like I am. They have had to be performative so much of their life. They're a little bit on the outside of what we typically consider to be what it looks like to be successful, and they're struggling with their own identity and how to embrace their own identity, and they're struggling with things like imposter syndrome and burnout and workplace or business related mental health, and asking for help and all of these things that I talk about, because they're like me. And so, it's very much been shaped as my life has changed. Like, as I became disabled and was dealing with all of these challenges, that has shaped my leadership journey and who I'm speaking to and what I'm speaking about, because it was required for me to do it. Like, I had to do that because that's what was happening to me. And I no longer had the option to mask at the level that I was masking at. I no longer had the option to just push through. My body was literally like, no, like, at one point in time, at the worst of my symptoms, I was having falls 4 to 6 times a week, for example. And the more I tried to just push through,
Yeah.
the more that happened. The more I would have falls, which is, scary and dangerous.
Mhm.
And so it was very much like this process of learning to accept myself as I am,
Yeah.
embracing my identity, having my identity shift and change throughout the years, and coming to terms with what my identity is. I mean, I think we all go through this experience, whether you become disabled or not, as
Right.
move through life, as we move through both our personal journey as well as our professional and leadership journeys, we have these different points that we're like, I am no longer who I was before.
Mhm.
Now I'm in a place that I'm recognizing I can no longer do things the way I used to do them. I have to do them differently.
Yeah.
And so that's really the audience that I speak to and that I work with. And it's people similar to me
Yeah.
that are wanting to be on the journey of self-exploration and knowing themselves and self-identity and are on a leadership journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Krista, thank you for sharing that. And I think you bring up an important piece, especially when we talk about like the invisible disabilities that are present within our community, within our workspace, and making sure that as leaders, if we are not the ones with a different ability, that we are leading from a place where we can create an environment where everyone is thriving and they see success. Can you give us just a couple of pieces of advice for those that are in a leadership role that they may not have a different ability or they may not be a part of the LGBTQIA community? Um,
Mhm.
how can they create that space so that people show up as themselves and are able to truly feel that sense of belonging and desire to thrive and move everything forward because the desire is there.
Yeah,
There actually may be limitations or the environment or what have you. Talk to us a little bit about that because I think that's an important piece for leaders to
absolutely.
understand.
Absolutely. And I think there's two elements that really influence that. And one is vulnerability and one is curiosity.
Uh-huh.
So, the vulnerability is it doesn't matter what kind of whoever it is that you lead, whether they're employees and staff that work for you, or you're a community leader of some kind, or you're a thought leader, like whatever kind of leadership you do, you can say all you want that these are things that you believe, these are values that you believe. But if you are not showing up as that, if you are not leading as that,
Mhm.
other people will not feel safe
Mm.
to do what you are saying you promote. They're not going to feel safe to show up as themselves, to be authentic if you are not showing up that way. So there is a very high level of vulnerability. I think when leaders become more vulnerable, like that is when we're leading by example and creating that psychological safety for others to follow.
Yeah.
And we're not just saying it's a certain way, we're actually creating that experience for others.
Like the environment speaks to it as well as the words.
Yes.
Yes.
Because, I think most of us, if not all of us, have been in a situation, particularly in a traditional employer situation, where the company says, these are our values. And like you see that those values are not actually represented in the leadership of the
Mhm.
company. Like, back in the day when work life balance was a buzzword, they would say, like, oh, we value work life balance. But then you see the leaders, coming in early and staying late or working
Mhm.
60 hours a week or whatever. And it was just like, you say you value work-life balance, but I don't see anyone practicing that here.
Exactly.
I don't see anyone showing me that it's okay for me to do that for myself within this organization. So, really that being vulnerable, because it feels scary to be authentic and to show up as we are and to share parts of ourselves with others. I mean,
Mhm.
and there's ways to do it, right? There's always a balance. Like it's not shoving it down anyone's throat. It's not, you know, leading with that, but it's just like being organically, this is who I am. And
Yes.
so that's the vulnerability piece, is I think leaders leading by example and showing up as that. And I think the other piece is curiosity.
Mhm.
And that is not thinking that we know anything about another person. I don't know someone's gender unless they tell me. I might
Exactly.
I might get context clues about their gender. I might be like, "Oh, I can see that they're wearing a dress and they have long hair and they're wearing makeup." And I might think, "Oh,
Maybe.
maybe that
Yes.
means they're female."
Yes.
But I don't really know that
No.
for sure, because people are really, so many. I love that younger generations are really leaning into gender expression in such a
Yes.
way that they're taking a lot of these rules around makeup and clothes and saying,
Yeah.
I can be 100% masculine and still explore in this area and play and just kind of, discover. So it's, it's the curiosity piece. And it's
Yes.
like not assuming that you know things about people from how they behave or particularly how they look,
Yes.
and asking a lot of questions. And I think that goes so much deeper than identity too, because I'll tell you a mistake that I made as a supervisor in my career when I was in my early 30s. I had this employee who worked for me that had just been a great performer for quite a long time, and her performance started to decline. And I saw she was making a lot of mistakes on some very simple tasks. And so I I totally handled this so poorly. Like this was a huge fail, leadership fail on my part. That would be a fun podcast, leadership fail. Let's share your biggest leadership
I
fail.
was gonna say maybe that becomes a segment of the show. I'm gonna
Yeah,
put in
yeah,
that.
leadership failures. This was one of my leadership failures. And so, when I saw, like, again, this is where even though I wasn't diagnosed, I can see my autism came into play. When I saw she wasn't able to perform the task correctly, I assumed, I was like, "Oh, let me just give her a refresher training on the task."
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I sat her down and I had zero curiosity. I had all my assumptions well in place that, like, you're not able to perform this task correctly anymore. You're making mistakes. So let me just show you how to perform the task again.
Yeah.
So she just sat there as I walked her through and retrained her on her job that she'd already been doing for all this time.
And
And
doing well, no,
at
nonetheless,
one
right?
point,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And she's just sitting there with me as I'm like walking her through something she already knew how to do. And she started to get emotional and tears started to well up in her eyes. And I was just like, okay, what's going on here? And that was the point that I got curious. That was the point when she got emotional and started to tear up. And then I got curious and I started asking questions.
Mhm.
And as it turns out, the reason that her performance had started to drop was because she had some things going on at home that were distracting her and she was making more mistakes. And when I sat her down to essentially retrain her on the job she already had, to her, that felt like I was saying to her that I thought she was stupid and
Mhm.
didn't know how to do her job. That was how she perceived that
Mhm.
action that I took.
Right.
And that was so wrong. And what she needed to improve her performance was actually just a little bit of grace
Yeah.
and some space, and she needed just a little bit of flexibility at her job to, occasionally, like, leave during the day to go take care of some of the details of this personal situation that she had going on, and to just try to manage and navigate it. And that's the support she needed to in order to be successful. And that was the only way she was going to get back to that higher performing employee that I had known before, was like by giving her the right support. And I won't know what the right support is if I'm not curious.
Exactly.
So that was
Exactly.
one of my leadership fails. I will never forget it to this day. I feel awful. I'm not responsible for her emotions. Of course, no person is responsible for someone else's emotions,
Right.
but the way we treat people can impact their emotions. And I just feel so awful that the way I handled that situation, the result of that was her feeling so small.
Mm.
She
Mhm.
felt so small in that moment, and that, like, she was trying to hold back her tears, but they were coming out anyways. And I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I never want to make anyone feel small
Right.
like that, you know?
Yes.
And so I learned from that experience to just lead with curiosity.
Mhm.
I can share something I've observed, like, hey, I've noticed that there's been a higher rate of mistakes as it relates to this job function. What have you noticed? What's going on? Are you lacking a resource? Are you lacking training? Like, how, like, what's happening here? You tell me. You're the one doing the job. You know more about this than I do. Like, what's happening? You
Yeah.
tell me what I don't know. And so, I think that's true regardless of who you're leading, is to be curious, because you might be leading somebody who is neurodivergent or who has a disability, or you don't know unless you get curious and ask and say,
Yeah.
what is going on for you? What is the job like for you? What are challenges you have in your
Right.
role? Or what is it you're trying to do out in the world, and what are the challenges and barriers? How can I support you?
Yes.
How can we work together to help you be more successful? And so it's asking questions and it's being curious and it's not assuming that I know. Like, even if I knew someone was autistic,
Mm-hmm.
someone I was leading was autistic, even if I knew that, that doesn't mean that I understand. Even as an autistic person, that doesn't mean I understand what they need to thrive.
Exactly.
I know what I need to thrive,
Exactly.
but I am one person with autism, not all people with autism,
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
And so it's
Yes.
like, I need to be curious and saying, like, what do you need to thrive? How does this work for you? What does this look like for you? But if you don't have that vulnerability piece, people aren't going to feel comfortable to be honest in their answers necessarily. That's a common thing, right? Like they're going to feel like, I still have to hide.
Yeah. Why would I share that with you?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like
Yes.
one of the aspects of my autism, I also have a commonly co-occurring condition called dyspraxia, which affects my balance and coordination and spatial awareness. And one aspect of my spatial awareness being affected is that, so someone who's dyslexic, numbers and letters get flipped.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For me, directions get flipped, like left, right. Discrimination is affected.
Yes.
I have been embarrassed about this my entire life. I still have to do the like, where's
Yes.
the L? Like, this is
Yes.
the left side. Yeah. And I've been embarrassed because it's not that I don't know the difference between left and right. I do, in fact, know the difference. It's that my brain flips it on a regular basis. And so I'm not going to feel comfortable. Like, there's so many years of my career that I would not have felt comfortable sharing that with
Mm,
anyone
right.
because I would have thought they're going to think I'm stupid. They're going to think probably just stupid, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what they're going to think. They're going to think I'm too stupid to figure out left and right.
And
When the
so then you don't have the competency to figure out anything else beyond that, right? Like the more complex issues or opportunities that come up. Absolutely. Yes. So
uh
you hold yourself back because of this belief that you've created, this narrative that you've created for yourself. If you
uh
were to share that with others, how you'd be treated, how you'll
right.
feel.
Yeah, what they're going to say about me, what they're going to think about
Yeah.
me, they're going to think that I'm not competent or I'm not competent in these other ways.
Yeah.
So if the leader isn't showing up in vulnerability and leading with
Hmm.
that, people are not going to feel comfortable to share that kind of detail.
Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely. Chrysta, I think it is really key when you talk about curiosity. That's one of the key phrases that I always default to. I always couple curiosity with respect, but I think when what you've shared is so important is looking at uh, situations, interactions from a stance of curiosity, asking questions and listening. Like you've got to do all three, right? Like not just curious and assume or bring your own assumptions to the table when you're having the discussion. Because in your example that you shared when you were working with this employee, you could have very well just approached that situation to say, what I see happening here is X. I'm the manager, so I need to make sure that I fix it. And we go into that fix it mode, right? Like I'm in
Mhm,
the leadership role instead of, I've observed this. What are you witnessing or what are you feeling right now? Are there any shifts that are taking place? And that really requires the manager or the leader to truly slow down
mhm,
to and listen, I understand. Leaders are busy. I get it. But if you're truly trying to bring out the best in everyone on your team, truly slowing down and taking those moments to be curious and ask the question and listen to the response and then work on it together instead of trying to enter the conversation with the solution.
mhm.
Yeah.
And the fix it thing, oh my gosh, yes,
Yes.
100%. I think that's so
Yes.
relevant. And I want to reiterate that because even once the other person gives you more information when you're coming from a place of curiosity, don't immediately go into fixing it. Too, say,
Yes.
okay, what ideas do you have? I love this question for people I'm leading. I love to say, what ideas do you have about how we can resolve this or improve this?
Yes.
And so I get them because then they're taking ownership of
Hmm.
improving the task, and they're not just feeling like a scolded child,
Yeah.
you messed up. They're feeling like, "Oh, I get to be part of turning this around, and I
Yeah.
get to have some ownership and share my idea." So the stay curious, stay curious, stay curious.
Yeah.
Watch the fixing. Watch when you go into fixing to be like, and sometimes too, I have also learned as a leader that I used to take responsibility for other people's performance and the results that they got, and that was something that I really had to learn. That is not on me. Like, I can do everything right, and people can still fail or still do a really poor job,
Yes.
and I have to not take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, 'cause first of all, it's impossible for me to control someone else's outcome
Yes.
and all the factors, and they have to want to be part of the solution and all of those things. But also, I am only human, and I am never gonna get it right 100% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's huge. I think that is huge. Thank you. It's a nice reminder as well, right? Like just we don't have to come with all of the solutions, and in most cases we shouldn't believe that we need to have all of the answers, and we definitely don't need to just come with the solutions. Create that space for the critical thinking to take place, right? With all parties. And that way we can actually build community and build relationship with everyone. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Krista, this has been fabulous. Do you have any additional words of wisdom, tips, or advice for our leaders, our solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, executive leaders that are listening to the show today?
You know, because of the conversation we would have, I would say, see if you can create some space for yourself
Mm,
this week to be more authentic, to take a part of yourself and maybe show a part of yourself or allow a part of yourself to be witnessed and seen by others
yeah,
that you have been hiding up until now, that you have been avoiding showing. And it doesn't even have to be like if you directly manage people, it doesn't have to be directly to the people you manage,
yeah,
right? Just is there some room that you can go into that you have been hiding some part of yourself that you can say, I'm just going to practice here. I'm going to let some aspect of myself that previously felt like I had to hide or reject or minimize, and I'm just going to let it be present in the space.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's a nice introspective challenge for the listeners. I like that. Oftentimes the thing that we avoid the most, right? Like I don't want to look in the mirror. I don't need to I need to lead others. I don't necessarily need to focus on the things that address me, right?
Yeah.
Today's your opportunity. Krista has given you the invitation. I feel like you should take it.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing your personal story, your journey, your insight, and some tools and resources that we can take with us on our leadership journey. One of the things that I like to do to wrap up each episode is to ask the guest 5 years, 10 years, 100 years from now, Krista, how do you want to be remembered as a leader?
I want to be remembered as a leader that truly empowers others, that helps them, I helped them accept themselves, love themselves, and be themselves more at work as well as outside of work.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Accept themselves, be themselves, and love themselves.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Oh, I think that's a fabulous place for us to end. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been an honor. So exciting and a great reunion. I love it. And I guess geographically, we're probably no more than 15 miles away from each other, but that's okay. We've connected on the virtual space in the pod world. Thank you for taking time out of your day and your schedule to join myself and the listeners. We are so grateful. I will make sure that we put your links,
Mhm.
your LinkedIn company page, Live, Love, Work. If I
Uh-huh. Yep.
uh, all off of memory. Oh, I'm so proud of
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Live, Love, Work. We will make sure that we drop that in the show notes as well as your personal page so that people can
Okay.
connect with you, learn more about you, and work with you if there's alignment in that space. Krista,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Loved the conversation. I get so inspired by having these conversations. It's just such a great reminder of why I want to show up as a leader and why I continue to do this work.
Agreed. I agree. I think every time I have an opportunity to connect with fellow leaders and we continue to talk about the work that we're doing in this space where we truly are creating an inclusive and welcoming space for leaders, aspiring leaders, those that just look up to leaders. It definitely fills my bucket to know that there are many of us that are doing the work and seeing the progress that we're making. It fills my bucket so much. So thank you for continuing to do that
Thank you.
work.
Yeah, awesome.
I love it. For our regular listeners, if you all have not subscribed yet on your favorite streaming channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go ahead and do that now. We are in video format on Spotify and on YouTube. So if you want to see the video version of this pod, check us out on Spotify and YouTube. And then make sure that you are subscribing to our newsletter on Substack and LinkedIn, the Flamingo Files on both platforms. Until next time, we will see y'all soon. Have a good one. Thank you for spending time growing with me on the Leadership That Shines podcast. Every episode is built around the values of impact, influence, and growth, and I want all three of those to show up in how you lead starting this week. If this episode added value to your week, share it with a leader in your world who is ready to grow. Subscribe and follow so that you never miss a week, and I'll see you in the next episode.